Hello, my name's Heidi Razakari and I work in the Poison Centre team at ECHA. Welcome to today's Poison Centre webinar, closing in on the first compliance date. Our agenda today will cover the Second Amendment solutions. We will also look at the updates from the PCN IT solution, the latest in system-to-system service. We will also cover and provide some validation tips for successful submissions, an update on the guidance, as well as provide some support and practical advice on a number of hot topics. You can expect from us today to learn more about the key changes of the Second Amendment to Annex VIII. You will also learn how the dossier preparation tools support the new changes. We will also provide some tips for a successful submission and identify key support and guidance material. We will also provide some practical advice on the most commonly asked questions. Of course, today is your chance to ask your questions from our online panelists. To ask a question, you can join our Q&A at slido.com. You can enter the event code on your screen. The Slido will remain open for you to send your questions from 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock Helsinki time. We do ask that you only submit your questions that are within the scope of today's presentation. Of course, we do expect many questions, so if your question is not answered, please do make contact with us at our ECHA contact form. Today's material will be made available from our ECHA website. There you can find the video recording, presentations, plus the Q&A. So now let's jump straight into our first presentation, Annex VIII Second Amendment Solutions.
Hello everyone and welcome to this webinar on Annex VIII. Welcome also from my side. My name is Daniele Ape and I'm part of the ECHA Poison Centre team. I will present in my presentation some regulatory aspect linked with the amendment of the legislation of Annex VIII. So the focus on this presentation, the focus on the amendment is on some workability issue which have been raised by specific industry sector. But the regulation, the amendment, provides also some more cross-section sector solution. And this is linked in particular to the unpredictability of the composition, which is exactly an issue which can be shared by different products at different submitters. So it's very important to underline that the amendment, the Second Amendment of Annex VIII, did not change anything in the compliance date. So basically, the first compliance date remains 1st of January 2021 for professional and consumer mixture. There are also not really main changes in the standard information requirements, but the amendment basically brings in some solution to help the submitter to meet the existing requirements. It is called, this amendment, it is called workability amendment. And as I say, they follow the identification of some generic and sector-specific issues. So the solution proposed by this Second Amendment, they have the aim to seek a balance between the need for the emergency responders for Poison Centre to have certain information available, with the difficulty, the problem that were highlighted in comply with this requirement. So it's a balance between the two. The publication of these amendments happened in October, and this solution, they are basically They mean basically relaxed requirements for certain specific product, in particular fuels and construction products. There is an exemption for bespoke paint, and we will talk about this in my presentation. And then, as I say, the more cross-sector solution, which is the interchangeable component group solution. But let's look at it a bit more in detail. So first of all, the construction product. So the issue which was encountered was the very high composition variability, and this is due mainly to the variability of the raw materials, which can be of natural origin. So it is basically very difficult to know the exact composition and to be able to notify following the original standard requirement. So to notify composition with concentration ranges required by Annex VIII. This would mean that many notification, many UFI may be required, and also frequent update. So Annex VIII includes a new part D, which includes a series of standard formulas. So mixture conforming with this standard formula, they can be notified according to that formula. And each formula includes the components, includes the composition. So you can notify according to the identity and concentration specified in the standard formula. It has to be underlined that this list of standard formula is exhaustive, and it applies to cement, gypsum binder, and ready mixed concrete. So what will happen in practice? The new Poisson Center format will allow you to flag specific components which conform to the standard formula. So specific rule will apply, and the submitter will be allowed to deviate from the standard information requirements. A similar solution has been found for fuels. They have a relatively similar issue to construction product, so a high composition variability. So the difficulty to know at each point in time for each batch which is the exact concentration and which components are present and in which concentration. So also for fuels, Annex VIII includes now a list, a table. We have an exhaustive list of fuels, and for such fuels, the notification can include the composition from the SDS. So also here, is it possible to waive the stricter information requirements which are normally required by Annex VIII. A similar solution, a similar technical solution is provided now. So in the format, you will be able to flag the component. From a technical point of view, these fuels will be considered as standard formula, but there will be also the possibility to indicate the name of the fuel, in addition to flagging the component which conform with these fuels. Then the new amendment, new Annex VIII, will includes also an exemption for specific mixture paint. So the Annex VIII includes a definition of bespoke paint, which are paints which are formulated on demand at the point of sale for consumer and professional customers. So due to the practical difficulties in generating a UFI and notify before placing all this mixture on the market, Annex VIII says now that there's no need to notify the bespoke paint, and there's no need to generate a UFI for this paint, provided that the label of this bespoke paint will include certain information, and in particular the UFI of the base paint and the UFI of all the hazardous mixture contained in the final paint. Base paint and other mixture contained in the bespoke paint have to be normally notified by the formulator. Now, these were three sector-specific solutions. There is as I say, there is a more general solution, is a cross-sector solution, which can be used by anyone if certain criteria are met. This is called interchangeable component group. Basically, certain components were meeting the specific criteria defined in the amended Annex VIII. They can be grouped in the so-called interchangeable component group. Basically, it's a group which is supposed to include components which can be used interchangeably, but you don't know exactly which of these components is present at each point in time and in which specific concentration. An example is when you purchase a component which has a similar function in the final mixture, you purchase it from different suppliers. Now, Annex VIII allows you, as I said, to group this component in a group, in an interchangeable component group, if certain criteria are met, of course, and the concentration will be provided for group level, not for each single component. One of the main criteria is that the information on the final mixture, so hazard information and the emergency health response, should not change, regardless the component which is present in a specific moment. From a practical point of view, the format will allow you to include this interchangeable component group in a similar way as a mixture, but you will be able to flag it as ICG, as interchangeable component group. So the standard rules and the standard information requirement will be waived. Now, this is about the main new provision, but of course, Annex VIII includes some other, let's call it minor changes, which are not necessarily linked to the workability issues. In particular, it has been clarified how you should identify the final end use of the mixture, which of course affects the compliance data and information requirement. So there is this concept of end use not subject to Article 45, which means that if the end use of the mixture, where the mixture can end up with, is outside the scope of Annex 45, this end use should not be considered with regard to the notification of the original mixture. Now there is an extension to the derogation from the obligation to notify only components which are present, because now the standard formulas, they include component with a concentration range starting from 0, and the interchangeable component group they may contain components which are not always necessarily present. Also, how the MIM has to be identified has been clarified. So the UFI has to be always provided, even if this UFI was not notified to the relevant appointed body. And finally, the classification of the MIM's components is now required, and this is new. This is something new compared to the previous version of Annex VIII. So this is all for me. Thank you very much for the attention, and have a nice continuation of the webinar.
Hello, I am Claudia Rimondo, and I work in the Poison Centers team in ECHA. This morning, I will give you a presentation about the latest update on the PCN IT solution. In 2020, we had 4 releases in January, May, July, and the very last one occurred on the 26th of October in the ECHA Cloud. This last release is, let's say, the major one, because it includes the format changes coming from the amendments to the legal text, and it also brings a lot of improved functionalities to prepare and submit Poison Center notifications. And it also includes general improvements to the navigation and to the user interface. Before moving to the detailed explanation of each features that have been implemented, I would like to remind that the Poison Center format is a customized subset within the ECHA format. And as you know, the ECHA format supports the collection of scientific information under different legislations, not only in Europe, but also in Australia and in New Zealand. So every time we need to make a change in the PCN format, we need to be sure that we are in agreement with all the other formats supported by EUCLID. The EUCLID core format is updated once a year in October. And so the same happened for the format of Poison Centers. Now let's move to the detailed features that are available in the October release. And these features have been organized for features related to the dossier preparation and features related to the dossier submission. Let's start with the dossier preparation. The October release includes the possibility to notify standard formulas, interchangeable component groups. It also includes a change from the generic product identifier to the generic component identifier. It includes the updated EU product categorization list and a list of justifications in case the PH is not available. From October now, it's possible to provide multiple packaging sizes inside the same product record. And there are also two new reasons for update: the correction/deletion of trade name and the expansion of market area. This release includes the GHS changes reflecting the GHS revision 8 published in 2019. A new way to display the EU PCS codes in a hierarchical way. New business rules that are related to the interchangeable component groups and the standard formulas, and related also to the latest amendment of Annex VIII. You will see improvements in general in the navigation, reflected in a new navigation tree in the dataset view. And also you can view document inbound references, meaning that before deleting a document, you can check which other documents are referring to the one you want to delete. We will now focus on the features that have been highlighted in yellow, and we will look at them into more detail. Let's start with the new terms and concepts that have been introduced in the new PCN format, with the standard formula, the interchangeable component group, and the modification of the GPI into GCI, because now we refer to generic component identifier and not to product identifier anymore. How to notify a standard formula? We need to start from the mixture identity. And as usual, you need to provide the name of the mixture and the legal entity of that mixture that corresponds to the legal entity of the duty holder. But now you also have a new field, which is these other identifiers. From there, you need to indicate standard formulas as name type. And then you need to choose from a pick list the name and the description that refers to the standard formula you want to notify. Then you need to move to the mixture composition document. And here it's where you report the standard formula components. For each component of the standard formula, you need to indicate the identity and the concentration as given in Part D of Annex VIII. And as you can see from the screenshot taken in this picture, you need to flag each component as standard formula component by ticking on the checkbox. When you do that, when you tick the checkbox, the system knows that it has to waive the rules on concentrations outside of usual limits. Now, in order to support industry in the preparation of their notifications containing standard formulas, ECHA has prepared standard formula datasets in cooperation with Bureau. And these datasets are currently available from the Poison Center website. However, please be informed that the use of standard formula datasets remains under the sole responsibility of the user. So in case you want to make any change or add any kind of information, that's really your responsibility how you want to use these datasets. Again, we need to start from the mixture composition document, where we include all the components of the mixture. When you add the ICG, the interchangeable component group component, you need to add it as a mixture in mixture. And after the inclusion of this mixture in the mixture, you need to flag the component as an interchangeable component group, as it is presented in the screenshot. When you check that tick box, the system knows that it has to waive the default rules for the components. Then you need to report the composition of the interchangeable components, and therefore you need to identify each interchangeable component in the group, and this can be either a substance or a mixture. Within each interchangeable component mixture in mixture, you need to report the details of each substance, and then don't forget to link each substance to the reference substance. Moving on with the changes to the PCN format released in October, we need to mention a list of justifications that need to be provided when the pH is indicated as not available. So basically in the system, when you check that the pH is not available, you need to provide a justification. And this justification must be selected among a list of justifications that was agreed and discussed with ECHA stakeholders, with industry and appointed bodies and poison centers. In the dossier header, you have two new reasons for update. Basically, when you check that the submission is an update and you have to provide the justification for that update, you will find the correction/deletion of trade name and expansion of market area as new possible justifications. In case you want to provide a justification that is not contained in that pick list, you need to click on the field Other Update Reason. Once you click on that, depending on how many languages you have selected in your dossier header, the field will be made available in all the languages you have previously selected, and you can include your justification as a free text. Also, the new version of the EU product categorization system has been included, and more specifically, you can find new categories for medical devices, split categories from e-liquids, and merge categories of pyrotechnic products. Moreover, in order to make the selection among this product categorization system list easier, the way the list has been displayed has changed. Now you can find the list displayed in a hierarchical way so that the user can navigate inside the list in a more practical way. Also, you can start typing the category you are interested in, and the system will automatically provide you with the possible values you can select among. We have included a number of improvements to the navigation, and in particular, I'm referring to the navigation tree that is now available on the left-hand side of the dataset view. In this navigation tree, it is very easy to move from one section to the other of the dataset or of the dossier. And it is even possible to expand or collapse each section. From here, it is also possible to create new documents or delete your documents, and all the changes are then reflected in the dataset. The navigation tree makes also the creation of the composition of your mixture a bit easier. Before the navigation tree, in fact, you had to create the substance and the MIM datasets outside the main notification. And then, once you were in your mixture composition document, you had to link all those datasets that you had previously created. But now, using the navigation tree, you can create your component datasets directly from within the main notification. Because of the navigation tree improvements, and because of the feedback that we got so far from users related to how to prepare a notification from the dataset view, and because this feedback was mostly positive, especially because basically the user is not exposed to the full EUCLID document, but indeed it can only deal with the PCN customized documents. So based on that, we can confirm that the guided dossier tool will be decommissioned in April 2021. The transition has already started. It started already in April 2021, but ECHA will continue providing training and tutorials and up-to-date support material in order to make this transition easier and make sure that also the users that are still using the guided dossier tool can easily move to the dataset view. With all the changes coming with the October release, it may be useful to remind how to prepare a PCN notification. Remember that the steps you need to follow are the following. You need to create a dataset of the notification you want to prepare. And this dataset needs to refer to the mixture you want to notify. You need to fill in the dossier header first. After that, you need to enter the information in the body of the dataset. Then you need to validate the information you have included. And after that, you can create your dossier. Let's look now more into details in each one of these steps. Everything starts from the EUCLID dashboard. And under the widget mixtures, that's where your journey starts. The first thing we need to do is to create a new mixture dataset. So first things first, you need to enter the name of the mixture dataset and specify in which working context we want to work. In order to prepare a PCN notification, we need to select the working context CLP Poison Center notification. After this, we need to open the draft dossier header. The dossier header contains the information that defines the validation rules, and it also establishes the free text fields for specific languages, which are those that you want to use to prepare your dossier according to the country where you want to notify your mixture. Note that you need to select the submission type only when that is relevant. The options are submission type limited, when you want to notify a mixture that is for industrial use only. Voluntary, when you want to notify a mixture which is out of scope, or maybe you want to notify as a non-duty holder. Also note that currently the group submission is not supported by the system. That is a feature that will become available in 2021. Then you need to include the information in the body of the dataset. And as I explained before, the navigation tree will help you to move from one section to the other of the dataset so that you can fill in the information in an easier way. Take into account that because this is a new feature released in October, new support material has been updated to explain you how to create a dataset in a step-by-step manner in the practical guide, which is available on the Poison Center website. And also video tutorials are made available to explain you how to prepare your notification. When preparing your composition, it's important that you remember that all the components, either substances or mixtures, need to be added. And you need to use the checkboxes to flag whether a component needs to be treated as a special one. That is, a component is a generic component identifier or an interchangeable component group or standard formula. You need to use the checkboxes to let the system know what kind of rules it needs to waive. Also, remember that every substance component must be linked to a reference substance dataset. And that applies to all the components but the generic component identifiers. The reference substance is what actually defines the identity of a substance and can be created either on the spot when you prepare your notification or it can also be downloaded from the EUCLID website. Once you download the reference substances and import them in your EUCLID instances, you will find them in your EUCLID instances and you will be able to reuse them for any other notification you want to prepare. Also remember to include the toxicological information. The toxicological information needs to provide as a free text field in all the languages that you have selected in the dossier header. Finally, in order to make sure that you are creating a valid dossier, you need to run the validation assistant. Be informed that with the October release, new rules have been implemented, and also old rules have been updated according to feedback that we received from the stakeholders and also according to the amendment coming from the legal text. The complete list of rules that have been implemented with the October release is available on the Poison Center website. You can also view the content of the notification you have prepared by generating the PCN PDF report. This report has been updated to include the standard formulas and the interchangeable component groups. And it has also been improved based on the feedback that we received from the stakeholders in the past months. For instance, the classification of each mixture component has been included. Let's move now to the features released in October regarding the dossier submission. We will look at the improved ECHA Cloud Services landing page, at the improved ECHA Submission Portal user interface, and I will explain the new messages made available from authorities to industry in the submission report. Also, we have worked to provide a printable version of the submission report and to update the terms and conditions of the ECHA Submission Portal. Of course, as it is for the EUCLID Cloud, validation rules, new ones and updated ones have been implemented also on the portal side. Let's focus now on the ECHA Cloud Services landing page. You can see now the page has been organized in two main areas. The upper area gives you access to the services for the preparation of your datasets and of your dossiers in general. The lower part refers to the access to the ECHA Submission Portal. From here, you can also access the trial version of the ECHA Submission Portal to get familiar with the actual features of the portal, but without submitting fake data to the appointed bodies. When you access the ECHA Submission Portal, you will see that the whole user interface has been changed. And that was needed because from October 2020, the ECHA Submission Portal also accepts notification submitted in the context of the Waste Framework Directive. If you want to submit a Poison Center notification, you just need to follow the steps you used to follow before. Just make sure that you are in the right box, the one that is labeled as CLP Poison Center notification. As I said before, there is also a trial version of the ECHA Submission Portal, and the same user interface applies to the trial version as well. But the main difference is that in order to remind you that you are in the trial version, in every page you move, you will always have the orange header reminding you that if you are submitting something in this environment, every kind of data you have submitted cannot be considered real data to fulfill your legal obligations. New messages have been implemented to inform industry about the events related to its submissions. And these messages are displayed in the submission report. In the example that we provide in the slide, you can see that the submission report informs you about when the dossier was submitted, when the dossier passed the validation checks, and when the dossier received one of the countries, one of the market areas you indicated in the dossier header. The country will be indicated by a country code. Please take into account that the fact that the dossier has been received by a specific country does not mean that that appointed body in that country considers that dossier as accepted. To know whether each appointed body considers the dossier accepted, you need to refer to them. As ECHA, we do provide a reference table providing information on the member states' decisions on implementing Annex VIII. But we do recommend you to reach out to each appointed body and make sure with them when your dossier is considered as accepted. The PCN IT tool is in continuous improvement, and in November 2020, we will have the release of the new revamped Poison Center database. We will continue improving the solution for the preparation and the submission of the dossiers also in 2021, according to a planning that we will communicate later on. Of course, we do value your feedback. It's very important for us to receive your comments, and we encourage to do that using the ECHA contact form. When you send feedback via the ECHA contact form, please remember to select feedback in the topic field. And with this, I thank you for your attention, and I invite you to keep on watching to know more about how to prepare and submit your PCN notifications. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Stefan Supanic, and I'm talking about the latest developments in system-to-system service. As you may know, there are 3 ways of preparing a Poison Center notification. The first one is using ECHA Cloud Service. In this way, you can access a EUCLID hosted by ECHA. ECHA takes care about the backups as well as about the upgrading of the EUCLID version. We offer 2 different types of subscriptions, one trial for testing and one for production. The service is free of usage, and if you would like to use it, please see our webpage for more information. Second option is using EUCLID 6 offline. You can download EUCLID 6 from our webpage and install it on your own computer, or if you have multiple users, on your own company infrastructure. You can prepare the notification there and then submit it to us. More information on this on EUCLID 6 webpage. And the third option is system-to-system service. This is an automated approach where your own company system can send data to ECHA system. You can send one or a batch of dossiers. So now that you know that there are 3 different ways of submitting, and one of them is the system-to-system, you may wonder how to get onboarded with system-to-system service. The first step for you is to make a request to ECHA that you would like to use system-to-system. ECHA is reviewing this request and sends you a response back. Once you have the positive response, you can assign yourself a system-to-system key. This key is used for the authentication, and then you can start using their own implementation. First, we would recommend you to test their connectivity, and then to make a test in the test environment, and then go for the production environment. About the service request. When you ask for a system-to-system service, you may have 2 different cases. The first case is that you ask only for your own legal entity. In this case, we would kindly ask you to provide the username, the ECHA account name, as well as the UID, and the software you're using to connect to ECHA system. Or the second case, if you have a network or a whole list of legal entities, you may fill out the contact form telling us about your company, the process you have in place to legitimate your members, and an Excel file listing all the legal entity names, well as the UUIDs. As already mentioned before, we have a test environment. It's meant to do a realistic dossier submission and the processing experience. And any submission you send to the test environment will not be processed forward, meaning it will not be dispatched to appointed bodies, nor disseminated on ECHA's webpage. On how to use the test environment, I would refer you for the technical documentation. About the documentation, we have a set of documents ready on our webpage. The first one, how to join ECHA system-to-system service. This document is describing on how you can join us. Basically, it's a repetition of what I showed you before in the diagram. The next one is the system-system integration. This is a technical document explaining you how to use the S2S, how to use our APIs with some examples. Then we have a JSON file, an API-specific document, as well as the links to the PCN, the skip Euclid format. To summarize the presentation, S2S, system-system, is an automatic way of submitting dossiers to ECHA. You can find the documentation in this link, and if you would like to use it and want to make an access request, or you have any questions, you can always contact us via our contact form. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to this very short presentation about Poison Center validation rules. My name is Saara Sumila, and I work here at ECHA in the data quality team. So in my today's presentation, I was planning to focus on the things that we have noticed based on the help desk questions that have been a little bit difficult for the notifiers. So in the beginning, I'm going to explain a little bit general things about validation rules, and then a little bit tips about how to fix the validation rule failures. Then I'm going to explain the 3 most common questions in the help desk regarding specific rules. And after that, go through the very latest changes coming from the October 2020 Euclid format changes. And last, a little bit where you can find more help if you still struggle with these validation rules. So in the beginning, the general things about validation rules and how to fix them, and not to get those in the beginning. So the very obvious thing is that if you are using Euclid to prepare your notification, make sure we would recommend that you use the very latest version of Euclid. So Euclid Cloud is always automatically updated to the latest version, but if you're using this Euclid standalone, or we call them sometimes Euclid desktop version, then make sure, or we would recommend that you use the very latest version, because of course only the very latest can have the latest validation rules in them. And I have noticed sometimes from the help desk questions that people still prefer to use the old version where they which they are used to using, called this classical Euclid. It's a little bit more grayer version of the Euclid. But if they're using that classical Euclid, it doesn't have the language-specific fields that are needed to fill in some of the Poison Center information, such as the toxicological information. And I sometimes get questions also that, okay, I did validate my dossier in Euclid and it didn't have any failures. Then when I send it to the ECHA Submission folder, it failed some rules. So the reason is that Euclid has the possibility to check the content in one dossier. So it checks rules in there, but when the dossier is sent to ECHA Submission portal, it checks in addition some additional rules which are regarding to the history of the notification. So those are sometimes called like contextual rules. So only in ECHA Submission portal we can, for instance, check that if you submitted an update, did the constituents or substances change in the notification? And then a little bit like about the status of your notification when it's sent to ECHA Submission portal. So the status can be this failed submission. That is if you have had business rule failing. So these dossiers are not dispatched to the national authorities. So these ones you would have to fix before the submission is accepted to the processing. Or then it could be that the status is this exclamation mark. That means that you got some quality warnings in there. So these dossiers are actually sort of accepted to the processing. So these are successful and these are dispatched to the national authorities. But we would recommend that you check that should you fix the warnings that you got. Or then of course the notification can be successful if you didn't get any business rule failures or quality warnings in there. And next we're going to focus on the 3 most common questions in the help desk regarding these specific rules. And the first one is regarding to the topic that I was just explaining, the status of your submission. So the business rule 568 checks that if you send your first initial notification in the system and that failed, so then the status is not successful. Then when you send the next dossier to update that information, then you still have to select initial notification, not the submission is an update, because the system didn't find anything that it would compare which the submission was updated. So if you fail the business rule of 568, please check that you have already initial successful notification in the system when you send the next one. And the second business rule that notifiers sometimes struggle is the business rule 538 about toxicological information. So this toxicological information should be provided for each language that is relevant for your notification. And these languages are specified in the dossier header. So if you haven't filled in the languages in the dossier header, then you don't have these correct language-specific fields in the toxicological information. And if you're using really old versions of Euclid, they didn't have this function yet. So this is only working on now these little bit newer versions of the Euclid. So when you fill in the toxicological information, check that you have filled in that for each language that is relevant in your notification. And the text has to be at least 200 characters before the rule passes for each language. And the third most common question is that about qualifiers in the concentration ranges. So when you provide the concentration information for your components, you can decide if you fill in the typical concentration or the exact concentration or the concentration range. And if you decide to fill in the concentration range, then you would have to provide these, they're called qualifiers, so these greater than or less than options from the drop-down list for the concentration range. So provide the qualifiers, the values, and the units if you provide the concentration range. And I would also like to point out that when you are in the validation report and you have this text about the validation rule failure, you can already there see exactly which substance it was in your notification that got this warning or got this failure. So it mentions the substance name, and then also under the blue link, it gives you the components number where it is in your notification. So if you have many components, please check which number it is in your notification that it failed. And then coming to the latest changes in the validation rules coming from this October 2020 format update. And these are a little bit recapping what Claudia already mentioned earlier today. So we have this new business rule there called business rule 621. So if you indicated that pH is not available, then you have to provide justification for this one. So there's a drop-down list and you have to select one value from there. And I would like to clarify that we didn't have this justification field in the previous Euclid version. So if you are in the situation that pH is not available for your mixture, then you have to update to the latest version so that you have the correct field where you can provide the justification. And then we have also this new business rule 633. So if you have in mixture there, and you have identified the mixture in mixture with the substances. Now all of these substances, they need to include exactly one classification and labeling information record each. And you have to provide the classification part in these records. So we have had previously also checks for that classification and labeling information is provided for the main mixture, and the substances that are coming from the main mixture, and the mixtures that are coming from the main mixture. But now we also require that for mixture and mixture components have to provide each exactly one classification and labeling record. Then, starting from now, we have also wanted to notify the notifiers that because the notifications are not dispatched to the United Kingdom authorities, we don't allow them to select to market placement country to be these two options. So please don't select United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland or United Kingdom Northern Ireland when you indicate the market placement countries in your dossier header. Then we have noticed that companies sometimes indicate information that is not actually meaningful. So they have indicated, for instance, that not provided, not applicable, no information, not known. So please just provide that kind of information when you put the identifiers for the substance. So now we check that the UPAC name field, that the name there has to be meaningful. If you don't have anything meaningful to put there, just leave it empty then. And the other field where we do similar kind of check is the substance name. So substance names always have to be provided, but again, it has to be meaningful. So don't write there, for instance, like confidential information or proprietary substance or anything like that. Just provide the real name in there. And one of the fields that were a little bit modified now in October is the justification field, that if you indicated that the submission is an update. So previously, if you indicated that the submission is update, the justification field did have also option other in there. Now it doesn't have that anymore. Instead, we have these language specific fields, other update reason. So now if you indicate that the submission is an update, you can either select one value on the justification field or provide other update reason there with all the specific languages for your notification. And if you're still struggling with these validation rules, where you can find a little bit more help. So as Heidi have mentioned, she has prepared this nice busy and practical guide. So it has a lot of screenshots where it indicates specifically how the information is supposed to be filled in Euclid. That's very helpful. And then we have this list of validation rules. So this just gives you like very short description of each rule that we have currently activated in the system. And sometimes it's a good place to start if you want to have like overall picture what kind of checks we do for the notifications. And then, of course, you can send the help desk questions to us. So if you're on Euclid Cloud or in ECHA Submission portal, you can go directly from top right corner. There's this Create Support Request button in there. Or, of course, like you can go to our web page, and there you have this Contact ECHA tab, and you can send the request from there. And I would like to point out that when you send these help desk questions, it would help us to provide you a more specific or more relevant answer to you if you are indicating which system you are using when preparing this information. So for instance, are you using Euclid Cloud or are you using Euclid Standalone? If you're using Euclid Standalone, do you have like the version number of that, if it's really old or if it's the latest one? Or if you're using system to system or some other software to prepare the notification, because how to fix the errors can depending a little bit like which system you're using. And then it also helps that if you indicate the number that you have the question about, like the rule number. And if you have already sent the notification to ECHA Submission portal, then please also indicate the submission number of the notification so we can check there like how the information was filled in your notification. Or if you haven't yet sent the notification to the ECHA Submission portal, we would still like to know a little bit like how you filled in the information where you struggle to understand how to fix it. So you can provide either like screenshots, or ECHA also have this option that you can generate like PDF of the information that you have filled in. So if you could send some more additional information how you have filled in the information, then it's easier for us to help you to fix the errors. I think that was everything from my side. So thank you for listening.
Hello, my name is Pedro Rosselló Villarroch. I work in the Poison Center team here in the European Chemicals Agency, and I'm going to guide you through the guidance and support what you need to know for Poison Center notification. The first guidance document that you need to read is on harmonized information relating to health emergency response, Annex VIII to CLP. Version 3 is already published, and it has been translated to all the EU official languages. It's there available for you. We are already working on version 4. The publication is expected in early 2021. You can follow the process with the drafts and even the members of the partner expert group available in our website. The next guidance document that you have to check is about classification and labeling. We have 3 for this: the introductory guidance on the CLP regulation, the guidance on the application of the CLP criteria, basically classification, and the guidance on labeling and packaging. This one is also under revision. We acknowledge that this can be very complex technical issues. So for the sake of mixtures, which are the ones under the scope of the Poison Center notification, we have developed a website dealing specifically with the classification of mixtures. Here you will find the direct link to this page. This support material has been prepared with SMEs in mind, so it will be easier for you to follow. And because in any case it can be a complicated issue, and you may need to hire some expertise outside your company, you are invited to consult this checklist to hire a good consultant. This was prepared by the Directors Contact Group in the context of REACH registration deadlines. It was specifically elaborated for the SMEs, and it will be useful also for you in this context. You have there the link to the Directors Contact Group webpage in ECHA's site, where you will find this document. This also, as you see, has been translated to all the EU official languages. The next guidance document that you may need to use is about substance identification and naming of substances. If you need yourself to identify properly the mono and multi-constituents or UVCBs that you have in your mixture. Eventually, this information has been provided to you from your supplier, then you may not need this. Another one for which you may need part of it is the guidance on requirements for substances in articles. This is a reminder that the Poison Center notification obligations apply also to combinations of mixtures and articles. So if you have some doubts about the product you're placing on the market, if it's an article, a combination of both, this guidance document will help you take a decision. Another one is the guidance on the compilation of safety data sheets. As you may know, you need to fulfill or understand the information in sections 3 and 11 from the safety data sheet. This guidance document is also under revision. I will show you now how the website looks, ECHA website for the guidance documents. Here you have the direct link to the guidance documents on CLP. You have the 4 tabs for each legislation, and for each guidance document there's a little section with a description of the guidance document, a link to the PDF document, importantly a link to other support material in our website, so there you can always find more information. And for those guidance documents that are under revision, as the ones that I pointed out, you will find a link to the consultation procedure, where again you will find the draft that is being discussed. To find your language version, you should go to the right top hand side of the website. You will have a big list with the languages for the website, and choosing the one, you will get the translation of this website and the direct link to the translated version of the document. This was for regulatory support. We also have 2 very useful manuals when it comes for the IT tools. One is the PCN, a practical guide when you use the EUCLID format, specifically for Poison Center notification. The other one is about ECHA accounts manual. This deals with all the accounts that are managed in our IT tools, but you will find specific advice on how to manage accounts for Poison Centers. And finally, but not least, we have a section dedicated to the UK withdrawal from the European Union. You can also find there support information organized based on your role. For example, if you are a UK-based REACH registrant, or in general you're an EU-based company or downstream user. So I hope you have found this information very useful. Thank you for your attention.
Hello and welcome back. My name is Heidi Rasakari, and my presentation to you today will look at the support and practical advice on a number of hot topics. In particular, I am covering a number of areas based on the type of questions that we receive from you. This includes questions on the transition period, submissions before the compliance date, the EU importers and non-EU suppliers situation, legal entity changes, and of course the UK withdrawal and handling of notifications. Let's start with the transition period. So the notifier can only benefit from the transition period in a particular member state where there exists a valid notification for that member state and where there have been no changes made to the original notification. Now, benefiting from the transition period means that you do not need to immediately comply with harmonized reporting or relabeling your products with the UFI. The transition period ends on the 1st of January 2025, and all mixtures from this point in time that are placed on the market must be notified in the harmonized format. Interestingly, in some member states, mixtures have been successfully notified according to the national legislation procedures via the ECHA Submission portal. Here, the notification has met the harmonized format requirements, but it still can benefit from the transition period with respect to the timing for placing the UFI on the label. Moving on to our next topic, submissions made before the compliance date. So, before the compliance date actually starts, the national obligations still apply. However, submissions have been made to the member states that are not connected, and I would like to confirm they will remain in the database, but they will not fulfill any legal requirements, nor will they benefit from the transition period. From the October release of the IT tools, the submission report in the ECHA Submission portal indicates in the Submission Events section when a dossier has been received by a particular member state. This equates to the fact that the dossier has entered the database and is available, but in terms of placing on the market, you would still need to check the Overview of Member States table to see if the member state is accepting. I would like to share a few facts about non-EU companies. First and foremost, non-EU companies have no obligations under CLP and subsequently Article 45. Non-EU companies can indeed hold an ECHA account and even prepare information in EUCLID. However, they cannot submit in the ECHA Submission portal. But they also can support their EU importer by either providing them with the information directly for their own submission, or they may work as a foreign user on the importer's behalf, much like as a consultant. However, if there are any confidentiality concerns, there is a workaround that is explained in quite some detail in the Annex VIII guidance. To briefly explain this workaround solution is between the EU importer and the non-EU supplier. So firstly, the non-EU supplier can notify through an EU-based legal entity. Of course, this agreement process between the two parties is outside of ECHA's remit. One message we would like to say about this stage is that please ensure the careful management of the UFI, because it can be generated by either party, so either the non-EU supplier or the EU-based legal entity, and it can be generated with or without the VAT. And in some special cases, it may also be possible or desirable that the UFI is provided by the EU importer. The next step is where the EU-based legal entity begins the preparation. So firstly, they need to create their own ECHA account if they don't already have one. Then they would need to start the preparation of the datasets in EUCLID. So this can actually be done, as I mentioned before, by either party. However, for the submission of the information, so in this case, the voluntary submission must be made by the EU-based legal entity. The next point to consider is the EU importer. Now, the EU importer must be kept informed. They need to know which member states have been notified. The UFI also needs to be communicated to them, and they also must know if any changes occur to the mixture. The EU importer then goes about fulfilling their own Article 45 obligations. So ideally, they would generate their own UFI and refer to the previously submitted UFI in their composition as either a full composition, so 100% mixture in mixture, or as a component of the final mixture. With all the information at hand, they would then make a required or mandatory submission. The main message at this point here that I would like to convey is that the EU importer remains the duty holder and is responsible for the information provided in the notification. To take a quick look at the legal entity changes topic. So notifications submitted through the ECHA portal cannot be transferred to another EU legal entity. So this may be in the case of a legal entity change or even a merger or a split. However, if the new legal entity wants to have the notification associated under their own legal entity, they would need to submit the information again as an initial notification. Now, this is possible. It is possible that the data sets can actually be copied and shared between the two parties, between the old and the new legal entity. And this helps to ease the administrative burden. If this is done, the new legal entity's UUID must replace the previous legal entity's UUID to avoid any failures in the validation checks. There is screenshots and step-by-step instructions on how to achieve this in the PCN practical guide. On to my last topic of UK withdrawal. As we all know, the transition period provided for in the withdrawal agreement applies until the end of this year. The protocol on Ireland and Northern Ireland will apply from the 1st of January next year. In addition, the CLP regulation will continue to apply to Northern Ireland. What I would like to also mention at this point in time is that companies should follow the developments of UK national legislations on hazardous chemicals to understand their obligations and roles when placing hazardous mixtures on the market in the UK. ECHA has a dedicated website concerning UK withdrawal from the EU, and this will be updated soon, specifically to include information about poison centre notifications. To explain a little bit about how notifications are handled, that notifications that are affected by the withdrawal of the UK from the EU. Firstly, what needs to be said is that from January next year, EU companies must submit their own notification before they import mixtures from the UK. Now, they are now considered duty holders from that point in time, and they cannot anymore rely on the notification made by the UK supplier. Secondly, Northern Ireland companies can make use and submit notifications through the ECHA Submission portal to EU authorities. That said, they must create a new legal entity first. Any notifications to the Northern Ireland market area must be also submitted directly through to the UK authorities. So it is not possible anymore to submit those through the portal. And finally, UK companies that have used ECHA in the cloud will still be able to maintain access to the data sets that have already been created. So thanks for your attention. You can ask support from us at any point in time through the ECHA Help Desk. Of course, National Help Desk, or in some cases, the nationally appointed bodies are also available for you. If you would like to join our LinkedIn community, where we post news and updates, please do so. Our final take-home messages for you today include the following. So, the IT tools support the solutions that are provided for in the Second Amendment. Get familiar with these changes, use our testing environment, and visit our support pages for upcoming tutorials and guides. Next, compliance dates don't necessarily mean deadlines. Current national obligations continue to apply. You need to check which member states are receiving Annex VIII notifications, so keep informed. Things are changing. Know your role and your obligations. The ECHA and Poison Centre website should be your first point of reference, so make use of the wealth of material available. Don't forget, stay tuned for news and updates and join our LinkedIn community. And finally, the ECHA and national help desks are here to support you. Ask us if something is not clear. So that concludes today's webinar. Thank you for your attention. The webinar will remain open until 1 o'clock Helsinki time to answer your questions. If your question is not answered by the end of the webinar, please do send it via our contact form. Thank you.